higher education needs to free itself from this sort of stultifying ideologies that have kept it locked in place doing the same old things over and over. This is going to require um, probably a tug of war between um, the left and right in this country over what a good curriculum should look like, who should go to college, how much college should cost.
All right, welcome to Energy Arbitrage AI Podcasts, where we explore kind of how artificial intelligence, energy efficiency, and sustainability intersect with education, innovation, and research. I'm Kevin Topshin, founder of Energy Arbitrage AI, and today I'm honored to speak with Dr. Peter Wood, president of the National Association of Scholars, a nonprofit promoting academic excellence and intellectual freedom. Peter, thank you for joining us today. Where are you calling us from?
Midtown Manhattan.
Excellent, 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 excellent. And let's kind of talk about what keeps you busy and busiest lately at the National Association of Scholars. If you can
Well,
dive into that.
at any given moment, we have about a dozen different programs going on. We are doing work on uh, China's involvement in American higher education.
Mm,
We do work on the capture of university science by the special interest groups that often operate out of Washington.
hmm
We are interested in matters like the sustainability movement, have been for a long time. And
mm,
I would say we've become caught up in the stuff about Israel and the protests against American involvement in the Middle East lately. So that's all in our bailiwick.
got it, got it. And I guess for my listeners that may be less familiar with NAS, right? What are the core areas of focus right now? Is it what you stated, or anything else you would say? Some of the
Well,
core areas. Yeah.
our mission is that we advance traditional liberal arts education with its focus on the pursuit of truth, on
Mm,
academic freedom, and
mm,
preparing citizens for constructive roles in our democracy. Um, we've been around for 37 years now, and it's a membership organization with about 3,500 members, and most of those are academics. Uh, we publish a quarterly journal. We have a very actively uh, perused website called Minding the Campus. And
mhm.
we often involve ourselves in campus controversies. Sometimes individual faculty members have gotten afoul of their administrations or other campus controversies. Our idea is to try to keep the colleges and universities honest.
I see. Very good. I guess when conversations around, you mentioned it, right, around sustainability, a rise in higher education. How does the National Association of Scholars approach them? How do you guys approach as policy issues, research priorities, or kind of institutional ethics?
Well, I probably can best answer that with a story if you want to give me a
Sure,
few minutes to
sure.
tell it.
Yeah.
2008, one of our members at the University of Delaware called me up, said he had a student in his office who was telling him that the dormitories on campus were then dominated by a program run by the Office of Residence Life that demanded that all the students required to live in the dormitories, freshmen and sophomores, had to endure what they called a sustainability program. To the extent that sustainability meant anything to me then, I thought it was just a fancy word for environmentalism. So I was a bit puzzled. But it turned out in this case, sustainability wrapped its arms around a whole bunch of other things. They were uh, quizzing students on whether they supported gay marriage and were this was before the Supreme Court had decided that gay marriage was the law of the land.
Mm,
Students who resisted it were taken aside and basically browbeat into agreeing. They had to confess their sexual histories, which for many students they thought was none of your business, but that turned out to be the university's business. Um, we complained about this so-called sustainability program. The university denied it had it, but we got hold of a lot of papers that showed they did. The embarrassed president shut it down. And so it was a short-term victory for us, but it left me with the question of how in the world sustainability had become such an elastic term.
Mm,
I started a little program I called How Many Delawares, and we began surveying universities across the country to see to what extent the sustainability movement had become broader than it sounded. And
I see.
we found a frequently used Venn diagram that showed environmentalism, social justice, and economic equity as separate circles, and where they overlapped, you had a sustainable society. Um, well, that got my interest, and I began deeper research. I got some foundation funding to support this, to actually track where the sustainability movement came from, how much of it really had to do with the environment, and how many other things were wrapped into it. So, over the course of a few years, we became something of experts on the sustainability movement. 2015, we published a 250-page study titled Sustainability, Higher Education's New Fundamentalism. It was
Mm,
largely historical, so we took this back to the very beginnings of the uh, global warming uh, concerns in the late 1980s, and forward to that point in 2014, 2015. And since then, we've remained involved with the issue. It's also expanded for us into uh, further inquiry into the ways in which the federal government has funded the sustainability movement or global warming alarmism, had some connections to groups that oppose uh, global warming stuff, and I'm paying a lot of attention right now to what Bill Gates has to say.
oh, right.
That
Yeah,
brings you up
I've
to date
heard.
on what we do.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. Well, that's great. Um, I guess what I'm gonna sort of do is we'll lay it out for my listeners here. We'll start with the work and your mission, right? Zoom out and kind of talk about broader education, sustainability landscape, and close with some future possibilities, right? If there's any including how AI and energy optimization can help the institutions in general operate more efficiently. So let's talk about this. How does the association help colleges and universities evaluate or adopt new technologies responsibly? If you get involved in that, that is.
I can't say that we really get involved in it, although here and there we have been. Back in the around 2010 or so, Middlebury College in Vermont prided itself on being one of the first colleges in the country to have a really green campus. They set up their
Mm,
own energy production operation on campus.
mm,
And so we were tracking that college's claims that its new form of energy production was going to ultimately save the college money as well as produce clean energy. Um, Middlebury College has a claim to fame as having been the college where a faculty member named Bill McKibben is on staff. And McKibben founded a group called 350.org. 350 stands for the parts of carbon dioxide per million that his organization regarded as safe. Of course, actual CO2 in the atmosphere now is around 412, so McKibben's group is unhappy about that. In any
mm,
case,
mm,
this was beginning of the national movement that made uh, the demands to get rid of fossil fuels and to create sustainability by means of other forms of energy production a major issue for students. There,
Mm.
his organization, 350.org, got satellites on campuses all across the country. There were frequent movements calling for divestment from fossil fuels. Uh, that was a really big thing in the early part of the last decade. It
Mm.
eventually got sort of pushed aside by the rise of Black Lives Matter. It's like American college students have room for perhaps one central political social issue at a time. And for 5 or 6 years, it was sustainability, and then it wasn't.
Mm.
The movement never really went away, but it never
Right.
covered the mass appeal that it had prior to, say, 2014.
I see. I see. Um, well, I guess you sort of answered this, but do you see growing awareness among member institutions about the link between operational efficiency and educational sustainability?
Um, well, I think there is a big thing going on there.
Mm. Mm.
Back in 2004, I think it was, or thereabouts, an organization called Second Nature, founded by then Senator Kerry, promoted a thing called the American College and University President's Climate Commitment.
Mm.
The climate commitment, if a college president signed it, taken at face value, asserted that fighting climate change, or then called global warming, was the single most important thing that a college or university could do. Well, how are
Mm.
they going to do it? Part of it was by propagandizing the students and telling them how important it was. But the most practical thing they could do was try to shift their energy consumption, which for most college campuses was a very big part of their operational budget, to shift it to more sustainable forms of energy.
Mm.
I think that a whole generation of college presidents began to see energy conservation as not only a major part of their job, but a defining characteristic of what their presidencies were going to be all about.
Mm.
I don't think that's true anymore. It remains a talking point for a lot of college presidents, but now when they are challenged to say what the most important thing they could do would be, well, it would have been probably fighting systemic racism. At the moment, it's probably fighting President Trump, but the the attention focused on energy has shifted away from it. Uh, It could shift back at any moment. I don't know how this plays out. I think
Mm.
that I mentioned Bill Gates's climb down from the fire engine of uh, catastrophic global warming.
Warming, right?
He's not alone. A lot of people who had been proclaiming the end is nigh are now backing off from that. They were saying, oh, global warming is real, but it's not as catastrophic as we thought it was going to be. The steps
Mm.
taken have worked, and so on. So
Mm.
there's a softening of the public rhetoric over uh, how dangerous the times are. And
Right.
um, my own view is that the times aren't very dangerous at all, that we've done right well from the Industrial Revolution forward, perhaps some contribution to global warming from burning fossil fuels, but largely that's a story that remains mostly a story.
Right. Okay. Are research institutions adequately funding innovation in energy management or digital transformation from your perspective?
Well, I don't really know the answer to that. I would say that, no, I mean, I don't, of course, don't know the answer, but what perspective I have is that I think that the energy future for us probably lies in restarting the nuclear industry. And if we ever get there, to getting fission going, in the meantime, we probably should still be making better use of our fossil fuel resources, which are quite considerable, especially fracking and stuff like that. So, uh, what what more can be done in investing in campus infrastructure? Uh, well, I can say that a lot of colleges proclaim they've got a great commitment to that, but I don't have access to their budgets, and I don't certainly have the intellectual basis to judge whether the
Sure.
funding they've raised for it is suitable for what they say they want to do.
Well, have you noticed any examples where limited budgets kind of slowed adoption of AI automation tools that could have improved efficiency? Have you ran into anything within
No, I
your
haven't,
position?
but then I
Okay.
haven't been
Okay.
looking. So
I
this is
see.
you run into my limitations as a guest.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, fine. Let's kind of shift gears a little. So when you look at campus kind of operations, right? Regarding energy use, facilities management, data coordination, these are not things that you see any inefficiencies there. Is that something that you have any vision on or view on? Not really.
Not really, but I can throw in a few things. It's clear to everybody in higher education that AI is uh, already here as a major factor in their calculations over everything.
All right.
Much of the attention is spent on how AI affects what goes on in the classroom, but we all know that AI is going to affect every single operation, and higher education is in this awkward position now of facing uh, significantly declining enrollments and a faltering financial model. Apart
Mm,
from the really wealthy handful of elite colleges and universities, almost all these institutions are dependent for their operating budgets on tuition. Tuition comes mainly from two sources. That's Title IV student loans backed by the federal government, and from tuition paid by international students, of which
mm,
there are more than 1 million and who pay full tuition. Both of those sources of funding are under pressure right now. Some
mm,
of that pressure is political, some of it is demographic. Since 2008, the American birth rate has fallen rather drastically. There simply are not enough Americans born since that time to fill the seats at colleges and universities. And we know, because we have pretty good demographic control, that there will not be for the next 20 years. So higher education is a shrinking industry. Um, it may find ways to fill the gap. The thing that's most on the table right now is trying to convince older adults to go back to college. It
mm.
seems unlikely that you're going to convince sufficient numbers of retirees to compromise the support for their retirement by turning that money into college tuition, but some will. Nonetheless, what we're looking at when we look at higher education right now is an industry in decline. Um, and of course, decline in any industry never hits everybody at the same level of force. There will be some institutions that thrive, partly by cannibalizing the ones that don't. But right now, of the 3,800 or so colleges and universities in the country, there are at least 1,000 of them that are in peril and may not last another 10 years, if that.
Okay. Okay.
This all bears on the question of, are they going to, as a sinking institution, take
Mm,
their scarce resources and put them into better energy management? My strong hunch would be no, they've got other things to worry about, just trying to keep
right.
their nose above water.
Mm,
Uh, the ones that are thriving, Harvard, with its $57 billion endowment, can afford to put forth almost any kind of energy production, from offshore windmills to moonbeam collectors if they want them. But I I don't really know what their plans are.
Well, with these institutions under this, real financial pressure that you just pointed out, and where do you think they could, find breathing room without compromising quality of education, right?
Well, I mean, what we're watching is consolidation. There's a lot of colleges that are deciding to blend their programs and shutter some campuses. They are closing uh, selective departments that frees up some resources for them. I suppose real breathing room would come from finding that they could sustain their international operations, but I said those are under
Mm,
pressure too.
mm,
Afraid I don't have a very positive answer to this. This is a period where if I were in the energy arbitrage business, I would say higher education is one of the areas where I would not be inclined to make strong investments.
okay. Interesting you say that because I mean, if you can demonstrate, measurable returns on operational investments, I mean, don't you think they'd be more open to that? Because what AI could do is you could basically take a lot of manual, repetitive processes and automate things, right? And so that should, allow, kind of with less resources to do a lot more work, right? I mean, and if you can measure that with actual return on investment, wouldn't you think some universities would be open to some of that? I mean, just if they could build those efficiencies within their system.
If they
Yeah.
can persuade their boards that these efficiencies are real and achievable, they probably would be open to that. Yes.
Okay. 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 That's good to hear, because I mean, what we do here at Energy Hub, because again, it's a first meeting between us. I mean, I basically, if I can't provide a certain ROI for any one of my clients, and that's like basically a 10% ROI within 90 days, then we'll continue working until we do, because there are a lot of inefficiencies within the system, and so if you could build these out and build them out to support their operations and really reduce costs measurably, of course, right? Then I think that's the goal, really. I mean, if you can lower operating expenses and sort of pay for yourself, which you can using technology, that's the business model essentially, right? So that's why I ask these questions, and my listeners are more keen to that too as well. Yeah.
Well, since I talk to a lot of people in higher education, I'm mighty curious as to how you could get a 10% return on investment in such a short period. What's the magic?
Yeah, well, since you brought it up, I mean, the magic is a lot of ways customers, well, let's say commercial clients, like higher education would be a commercial client, right? Because they don't know how and when to purchase energy. A lot of them don't even understand and don't know what they're consuming or paying for their energy until the month's already over. So with AI, if you build an agentic platform properly, right, customized to the client's pain points, you can then essentially pull actual data from the market. So you'll know exactly what prices are, power prices, natural gas prices, right? You can pull that live data. And in turn, from the utility, with their typically a higher education, universities behind the utility, from the utility, you can pull actual API live data for pricing as well, right? Their own tariff rates, as they call it, right? And so that knowledge could given to the right person at the university that manages an energy manager or a controller or finance manager or maybe a facilities manager, right? They won't be as they're proactive in terms of how they purchase energy, not reactive, right? So just that and that you'll save there. And in turn, a lot of them don't have an idea of where, because they can't see pricing, they can't see the seasonality of pricing, typically not supplied by the utility. You can build out a model for them to give a predictive analysis model, right? That utilizing fundamentals, utilizing weather forecasting, et cetera, and live data, right? You feed it with all live data, and then you can then have a good view with some probability, of course, right? Not P100, right? But good probability of where prices are going to go. So you can decide to perhaps lock in prices if you have that ability. Like a lot of universities are in areas or states or cities, right, that allow for wholesale pricing and wholesale supply. And so if you have that ability, you could do that, right? Typically, if you're stuck with the utility, that's more challenging, right? So when it comes to that, you can then look at the consumption on site. Many universities aren't really, they have a building management system that's outdated, that doesn't have AI capability, that's not talking to, it's all Excel spreadsheets. I've spoken to facility managers then. And so they're managing all this on Excel spreadsheets rather than integrating it within a live system that's analyzing what they're using, when they're using it, and sort of certain buildings don't need to be on with lights don't need to be on, or maybe the heater doesn't need to be on at certain times of the year because there's no students or there's no class or whatnot. Many universities, I mean, the large universities are really doing this well, but I'm talking about there's many colleges and smaller universities that aren't doing it very well. They're not managing it very well. And that's just a few examples. There's many more that can be done because what AI does, managed properly, it ultimately it gives you the knowledge that typical energy buyers don't have. Right there's the energy market's quite opaque, not very transparent, and this almost helps them democratize the whole energy market in some way. You get more information so you can make the right decisions, right? And anyway, so and I have different business cases I can share with you separately outside of this call, of course. Gives you some examples of what I presented, right, and what we've done with higher education. Yeah.
It makes a great deal of sense to me, and I would say that, yeah, there are lots of colleges and universities that are antiquated with their technology and probably could step right into this and do better. They'd have to make some sort of investment in getting their buildings capable of responding intelligently to what's available. But yeah, I see your point. You make a very good case.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. No, well, I'm glad. And again, separately, I'll send you kind of taking out the customer details. I'll share with you kind of an example, right? A business case, and you can it'll give you some more background beyond what I just said, more in depth, let's just say, right? So you'll see it. Uh, Switching back here, and that was a good segue though. Let's talk about this. Like looking ahead 5 or 10 years, what would you kind of like to see and change most in the way higher education manages itself?
Hmm. Well, I would like to see something approaching an academic revolution, I guess. I think higher education needs to free itself from this sort of stultifying ideologies that have kept it locked in place doing the same old things over and over.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
this is going to require um, probably a tug of war between um, the left and right in this country over what a good curriculum should look like, who should go to college, how much college should cost.
Mm,
Now, President Trump has put forth what he calls a compact with American colleges and universities.
mm,
It officially has 9 parts, but really has about 15 part subparts, and that includes things like holding tuition constant for the next 5 years. Now,
mm,
only 2 colleges so far have signed on to it. New College in Florida and the University of Texas at Austin, and many others have denounced it as infringing on their academic freedom and their institutional autonomy.
right.
Um, but that said, something like that compact, even if it's called by another name, is
Hmm.
almost inevitable. And for the reasons I've already mentioned, higher education is now too frail to resist. Again, for Harvard, Yale, Princeton, you can resist.
Mm,
But even places like Columbia, which has quite a large endowment of its own, has had
right.
to concede on some key points. So what we're seeing is this desire to try to make American higher education more responsive to the needs of American students and American industry. It's
Hmm.
not very good at that right now. Um,
Right.
and regardless of your politics, you sort of have to come to grips with the fact that this is an institution that needs to reform. And
Right.
um, so what I foresee is that uh, the failure of a significant number of institutions. We've had it's about 500 colleges have closed in the last 20 years. Not too many people have noticed that because most of those have been small colleges, little religious colleges, little for-profit colleges, but their disappearance has already had an effect, and the effect extends all the way to once mighty institutions like the University of Chicago, which is now shutting down some programs and laying off some faculty. That is,
Mhm.
we have reached the point where the business as usual no longer uh, can be maintained, and that
Right.
means we need to rethink how to do things better. Um, it's a since colleges are for the most part still residential institutions, um, and they have highly sort of inefficient energy usages. That is, their plant facilities may be used for 5 or 6 hours a day, but it has to be maintained 24 hours a day.
Right.
But those are places where creative change is needed. Um,
Mm.
it's probably not going to come by scheduling classes at 10 o'clock at night, but there's got to be some way to make better use of the facilities they have and the resources it takes to run them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely solutions that could be provided. I mean, you segue into an interesting question I have. Before we kind of wrapped it up, but would you be kind of open to exploring how organizations like myself, right, Energy Arbitrage AI, we could support universities or research networks in identifying and removing systemic inefficiencies? Because I've heard that from this conversation, there's definitely a need for change, and if an organization can help support some of that change, right? Uh, Albeit I'm in a certain niche, right? Uh, is that something you would be open to exploring?
Sure, I'd be open to exploring it. I mean, to be clear, I'm not running a college or university
Oh,
anymore.
right,
One
right,
time I was, but this is we are on the sidelines of higher education, but we're constantly advising institutions on what they should do, and I'd be happy
right.
to include this in the portfolio of things that we think would be a good idea.
Right, at least to have a conversation, because I mean, if you walk through it, all it is a conversation. Once you have that conversation, Peter, it's somewhat, you hear what the college is dealing with or the research institutions dealing with, and then I'll automatically hear where the issues are, because I've done that already with so many people that I've already spoken to from colleges. But in general, I mean, this has been great. This has been great for me. I know you're wondering, how are we going to talk about sustainability and technology? But I've learned a few things about you. Hopefully, you've learned a few things about us as well. And I appreciate your time today,
Well,
Dr.
you're
Peter Wood.
welcome.
I appreciate that definitely. And if you want to learn more about the National Association of Scholars, visit nas.org. And of course, you can find this and other episodes of our YouTube on our YouTube page at Energy Arbitrage AI. And until next time, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and let data drive your progress. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.